It's the final push, stage 9 of Tour of Hainan, the 9th and final stage, and what a hectic event it's been already this week. Incidents throughout the week and absolutely flat out racing. Pretty much every stage has been ahead of schedule, including yesterday's stage 8. The penultimate stage was billed as just something to in between the stage 7 race for the GC and the final push on stage 9. Well, that's not how it turned out. There were attacks aplenty throughout the day, groups up the road, and right from the get-go there was a category 1 ascent that split the field into a lead group of about 30. They hounded down the early break and eventually it came up to a final sprint to the line, but from a much reduced peloton. Plenty of the leading sprinters had been cast aside from the very earliest moments. That left the way clear for Marco Zanotti of Monkeytown to take a famous victory. The Italian absolutely thrilled. Not so thrilled in third place, Emils Liepins of the Delco Marseille Provence squad. Another podium finish, but still no victory. Can they do something about this on this final stage? So we head down to the place that it all began, Wanning Qinglong. There's the situation with Jacopo Mosca looking after that 3-second lead over Benjamin Prades, and Zanotti back in third place. Unlike the caption as it's indicated there, but here's the weather conditions for you. It's a fairly decent day. It's suggesting a little bit of rain. No rain at the moment at the finish line. For the riders out on course, we understand it's still dry for them as well. It's fairly warm, relatively humid, but it's well, it's been a great week of weather, hasn't it? It's been an absolutely superb 12th edition of the Tour of Hainan. Once more starting back where it finishes, working its way north on stage 2, the longest stage of the week, and that's where it all began for Jakub Mareczko. 5 successive stage wins for the Italian rider with the Willier Trestina team. He's been a bit anonymous in the last couple of days, but he might be thinking about reminding people of his sprinting talent again today and going for that 6th victory, which would equal the record in this race. So he's got plenty to race for, and this was the route through that took him on that extraordinary sequence of victories. The first stage, of course, at the beginning of the week, going the way of Team Ukia's Jon Aberasturi, and perhaps he'll be thinking about revisiting old glories by repeating that win, bookending the week in perfect fashion for Team Ukia. It's Jon Aberasturi looking to sprint later on, but that's always assuming they keep it together for the sprint. Stage 7 to Uzishan, that was the single big mountainous day of the week, but it was a pretty mountainous day yesterday. Really tough slog for the riders. Ended with a sprint, as I say, but that was after a really tough scrap out on the roads to Lingshui. That's our starting point for today's final stage. Takes us back up to the circuit that they used on day 1. Wanning Qinglong will be the final destination for Sam Crome. He has made the mountains competition his own. He's got a handy advantage heading into the final stage. And the man in the polka dots, the 23-year-old from Bendigo in Victoria, leading the Isoe Sports squad. Jakub Mareczko, he wore yellow for much of the week. With that sequence of sprint victories, he's got a handy advantage in the points competition. Not a winning one yet. Well, Mosca, his teammate, is the man in overall lead, but it's a narrow advantage. Can Benjamin Prades or perhaps Zanotti pinch a few seconds out on the road today, or even at the finish line? For Martin Lass, well, the objective is to try and do something about bettering that sequence of podium finishes, second place finishes for the Delco Marseille Provence rider. He's looking fresh and looking up for the fight, as indeed is the best Asian rider, Liu Jianping, sitting in a very impressive 7th place overall. He's very much in the hunt. Just 15 seconds back starting the day, with bonus seconds on offer at 2 intermediate sprints along the way. That selection of starting pistols for the final time have sent the riders on the way. 95 riders in total taking the starters' pistols. And that's down from 132 riders that began this event 9 days ago. It certainly has been a war of attrition. And you might have thought that they might think about just promenading down towards the finish and winding things up for a little bit of a scrap at the back end. That's not the way it worked out, because right from the beginning of today's stage, riders trying to get up the road in ones and twos, and big groups leaving in the main peloton, and that couldn't be allowed to prevail. So it has been a relentless scrap. It's taken a long time for anything remotely sustainable to head up the road, and even then you wouldn't say with any certainty that the group that's currently clear is certainly clear. Looks like they've closed it down. Indeed, we're just getting word that the group is still all together after what's been a sustained battle out on the roads from Lingshui, heading northeast towards that finishing circuit. There's one finish, it was climbs along the way. Final couple of fourth cat ascents in the back end shouldn't be of any great trouble. Joe Cooper leading teammate Sam Crome over the first King of the Mountains ascent of the day. Crome looking rubber stamped in that situation. So Joe Cooper and Sam Crome first and second at the first two climbs of the day. Those category 3 ascents, and that means that Sam Crome is absolutely certain, as long as he finishes today's stage, he will be presented with that final King of the Mountains jersey. It's been a great honour and a very impressive performance from Sam Crome. And his teammate Joe Cooper, well, he's like an absolute bull today. He has been in so many different moves and racing clear to take the first intermediate sprint of the day, to go with those two mountains ascents. He was sitting clear of the field, racing solo for quite a bit of that. So we pick up live pictures with just under 72 kilometers remaining. It's the Colt squad massed at the front. What have they got planned? Because well, they've much to race for between now and the end of the week, and the Colt squad giving the leading team, Jacopo Mosca's Willier Trestina squad, a little bit of assistance, because Willier Trestina have done so much of the legwork throughout the week. We pick out Liu Jianpeng of the Hengshang squad, the leading Asian rider in that blue jersey. And Marechko over towards the right-hand side of the bunch, still ploughing along, and still no sign of an early break assembling itself at the front. And watching with interest just at the tactical considerations as they've been played out on the road as they head up towards Wanning Qinglong is Magnus Backstedt, as he has been throughout the week. And Magnus, well, they just can't stop racing, can they? It's been absolutely flat out stuff.
It has been all week, and there's not often that we see this kind of racing where a group doesn't go away, certainly not in stage races. Maybe it happens a bit more in one-day races, where you get this kind of activity going into and going quite deep into every stage. But in a stage race, this is yeah, so something quite unusual to be fair. And to be 70 kilometers into the final stage and not have a break up the road, I think that's just goes to show how hard this race has been fought and how fast it's been all week.
Little surprised to see the Colt squad on the front. They have Mikhailo Kononenko sitting 4th overall at 8 seconds. They've got Andrei Vasilyuk, he's handily placed as well, 17 seconds back. But well, is it really up to the Colt squad to be doing the chasing? What's the tactical play here?
Well, it might not be up to them to do the riding on the front, but if they feel that they want to try and hold this together towards the next intermediate sprint, which comes at 91 kilometers, then they need to basically look after their interest, and with Kononenko sitting there 8 seconds down on GC, he could potentially make quite a good little move up on the general classification and put himself, yeah, well within podium position.
Wanning Reservoir is an awesome side. Wanning really is a fascinating place to go. It's got a wonderful tropical garden. Might get a chance to see that. It really can't be missed. Over 1,200 species of plant life in that tropical garden. here somewhere. We're in Lingxi Autonomous County, southeast of Hainan Island, bordering Sanya in the south and Baotang in the west. Irrigation, always such an important consideration, but not really of any great concern in this part of the world. Tropical monsoon islands in this part. Summer rainy and hot, winter dry, cold, annual temperature of about 25 degrees centigrade. Picking up the back of the peloton here, 60.5 kilometers remaining, 2 hours of racing under their belts to go with all that's gone before. 9 days in, it's a pretty long stage race.
It is quite a long stage race, there's no doubt about that, and even more so at this time of the year as well. A lot of the guys, certainly the European riders, will have a very long season under their belts already, and will no doubt start to feel a certain amount of the fatigue from the season, and probably, I think today, looking forward to a bit of rest and a bit of a break to recover before they start preparing for next year already. You know, we're already in November, and the guys will start training probably 1st of December again at the very latest, depending on obviously when their season objectives are for next year. But if there's any other riders who got half an eye on doing well in the early races, then they need to get going quite soon again.
Yeah, a lot of riders in here, of course, they really will have been a struggle to summon those weary legs and send them into battle once more. It is remarkable just how many days racing they do, and just how hard they race throughout the year as well. The season just is so long, so much longer than it ever was.
Yeah, it is quite a lot longer, but the teams are also sort of quite a bit bigger nowadays than certainly World Tour level. They're really quite big, so
well, they're shrinking, aren't they?
They are starting to shrink, yeah. But with that as well, you can spread the workload out over quite a large number of riders, which means, you know, if a rider is doing somewhere between 60 and 70, maybe 80 days of racing, that's quite normal. Whereas it used to be, if we go back 10-15 years now, there were guys, you know, you clocking 100 days of racing.
So Sam Crome secure in that King of the Mountains jersey and racing towards Wanning on the final day. Get the first break out of the way. Starting to get a little bit busy towards the front of the bunch now. Still over 65 kilometers remaining on this final stage of the Tour of Hainan as we race towards Wanning Qinglong. I'll tell you what, we've got a couple of little rendezvous before we get to that moment, because the Col cycling team here on the front are trying to set something up for Kononenko, their best placed rider overall, sitting 4th overall, 8 seconds back from the overall leader. Moscow's poking his nose into the wind on a few occasions. There you see the yellow jersey massing behind it with his Willier Tristina teammates, and then there are some other squads gravitating around. Why is that? We've got an intermediate sprint coming up.
Yeah, we've got an intermediate sprint in exactly 2 kilometers at 62.8. There's that intermediate, and I mean, within the first 5 riders, there is still only a couple of seconds in terms of time difference. Mark Demar and Mihailo Kononenko there on the same second, at 8 seconds down from Jacopo Mosca. And then you've got Michael Zanotti there, 7 seconds down. So those 3 riders really have got an awful lot to play for, because there's a podium up for grabs here, and obviously with it being fairly likely to be a bunch sprint today, and the way that Mareshko has been sprinting, I think it's going to be difficult to mop up the maximum bonus seconds there. So right now it's basically GC time for some of these guys. Mark Demar was up there as well, and towards the front we've seen Monkey Town up there with a couple of riders for Zanotti. So I think this is going to be a very hard fought intermediate sprint.
Yeah, riders at the back of the peloton, down towards the bottom of the block, out of the saddle, out of every bend. That'll tell you just how quick things are. Crome, in his King of the Mountains jersey, is just going to watch this one out and sit in the wheels as best he can. They're charging along towards this one. Let's remind you, we've already had one of the 2 intermediate sprints. That really wasn't a factor in the overall contest. Joe Cooper was clear of the field. He took the 3 seconds on offer on that occasion ahead of Maranese and Dylan Page. And now we look towards this sprint. It's coming up very soon.
1 kilometer to go exactly.
Yeah, just inside 1,000 metres is the Kols cycling squad, just trying to set it up and really drive on to try and present Mikhailo Kononenko into the perfect position. But the Monkey Town team on the left-hand side of picture in that black and blue jerseys, halved jerseys, are looking to try and put Marco Zanotti into a perfect position. 3 seconds gained here would leapfrog, well, would put him within a second of second place and give him a racer's chance of taking the overall. So Zanotti has plenty to race for. Mosca is showing himself well to the fore. Bit of a surprise for the yellow jersey. Is he going to go sprinting here?
Well, I think he has to be up there, and if he can mop up a second or so, and then he should definitely have a go at it. And here we go, the sprint's being launched.
The sprint is being launched as here comes Zanotti trying to get up into position. Kononenko is sprinting, but I don't think he's got enough breakfast for this one, and it looks as if the Delco Marseille Provence rider has just managed to pinch that one, so that could well have been Emils Liepins that just managed to snatch a couple of seconds. Watch for that. Liepins also well placed, 6th overall, just 14 seconds back, so an opportunity for him to leap up the overall classification as well. We wait with interest. It was a sort of a messy sprint, wasn't it? But just surviving through. A lot of tired legs in there now. Yeah,
a lot of tired legs. It looks like Zanotti is just on the left-hand side in the blue and black colours there. Just manages to grab a second or so.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Kononenko didn't actually get up for second place. They're all chatting to each other about the way they sort of weaved around the road there a little bit.
Yeah, this wasn't exactly the straightest sprint I've ever seen, but nevertheless.
So after the sprint, and still no early breakaway has established itself, up a little drag, perfect opportunity for a little bit of a counter punch, and the Bardiani CSF squad hasn't been a great week for them. Great opportunity to make amends.
No, Bardiani's really not performed up to the standards that we were expecting them to, but still one more stage to go and see whether they can come away with something from here. Marechko just marking proceedings, making sure that nothing goes anywhere without them having a rider in there as well.
Well, there's a big split there, isn't there? Because a lot of riders really feeling it after that sprint, probably thinking that they'd all just roll off the gas and they could just close back up without any difficulty, but instead they're finding that they have to just make a little bit of an effort. For all that, I think there's just a little bit of a stall at the front, but like one of the riders from the Swiss national team, indeed it is, has gone on the attack once more. The William Trestina team have brought their big players up towards the front. They've got the green jersey of Jakub Marechko, who'll be going for stage victory. They've got Mosca, the yellow jersey, ever vigilant at the front, and Mosca he's full of fight. He's on absolutely flying form, surely heading towards overall success, but not if Marco Zanotti can do something about it.
No, Zanotti, well, all the top 5 have still got an outside possibility of winning this race overall. It does mean that they have to win the final the final sprint and mop up the maximum bonus seconds. Apart from Prades, who is sitting on 3 seconds on GC. So, but Prades not a sprinter in any way, shape or form.
Riders in the cars coming back after that sprint, still lots of tender legs, and H&R Block have sent a rider up the road. It looks like the familiar figure who's been up the road again. Yeah, Alexis Cartier. He was up the road a little bit earlier on today as well, and I think he's gone for another one, taking one of the Swiss cycling. They've got all their team together as well, Swiss cycling. Just over 60 kilometers remaining, racing down towards the conclusion inside the final hour and a half of racing in the Tour of Hainan for 2017. The 12th edition has been perhaps one of the best, certainly one of the hardest fought. It's the issue is not absolutely concluded now either, is it? It's still very much in doubt, still opportunities, and still an opportunity for this early break. Say the early break, well, they've been out there a long time and still nothing of substance has managed to establish itself. 3 riders go up the road, and still there's another, what, 2, 3 or more that fancy just clipping off and getting into that, and that would end up being quite a big group, would be a source of concern to the bunch. The bunch is not big. There aren't too many teams that have got all their riders together. I just mentioned that Swiss Cycling have remarkably managed to bring all the riders through to this point. Willier Trestin is showing, I think, the strength that they've displayed throughout the week. Have a full complement of riders involved, so 7 riders still very much in the fray.
Yeah, definitely. It's been such a hard race that pretty much every team have lost a rider or two at some point. But this looks like it could be the move that goes up the road a bit.
This one has legs. The bunch behind stretched thin at the moment. How many teams will be represented? Bardiani CSF trying to come across. Looks too as if Team Vorarlberg, another one of those squads that have all their riders there. It was Liepens that took the 3 seconds on offer ahead of Kononenko and Zanotti. That's going to just alter things ever so slightly. Now these Bardiani and De Palos Simeon, who's been sprinting well but lost a lot of time yesterday. 4th and a 5th place in the first in latter stages. Just trying to clip across.
That intermediate sprint has changed the general classification a bit. It's meant that we now got Kononenko and Zanotti on the same time, 6 seconds down on general classification, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting final here. Can one of those two get themselves up and get one more second in the final sprint?
So Zanotti's still sitting in 3rd place, Kononenko's still sitting in 4th, but now they're level on time. So it'll be the finishing position across the line that will decide if there are no more bonus seconds taken for those riders. But Zanotti, well, 2nd place finish if Mosca or Prades don't score bonus seconds would be enough for Zanotti to take the overall win. So it's still, the issue is very, very much in doubt. Even if Jakub Mareczko was to win the stage, Mosca is going to be a nervous man because Zanotti is a handy sprinter.
Yeah, he's certainly very quick indeed, and if I was Zanotti, I would probably focus my whole sprint on Jakub Mareczko and just kind of gamble a bit on that. Mareczko still has the legs to finish this one off today. If he does, and he sprints in the way that he has been before, it's kind of been more or less enough to be in 2nd wheel. If you were able to hold Mareczko's wheel, you end up finishing 2nd on the stage. So certainly if I was Monkey Town sport director, and certainly if I was in Zanotti's clothes right now, then I would be just making sure that I was on that wheel coming through that final turn.
Yeah, superb sprint finish from Marco Zanotti. Managed to infiltrate that front group on a real day for the hard men. And those who have facility in the climbing, well, that's not the case with Jakub Mareczko. He was left to his own devices yesterday. He's very much in here, but he's down in the middle of the bunch at the moment. He's sort of he's difficult to see, isn't he? He's quite a slight figure. But the green jersey of Jakub Mareczko, but the yellow jersey, his teammate Mosca, is sitting 4th in line, and they've deployed their resources ever so slightly differently in that Jürgen Jupo's very much used as a final lead-out man for Jakub Mareczko throughout the week, is on the front of the bunch at the moment, setting the tempo. So tired legs in there, and they've decided to change the order of riders chasing at the moment.
Not necessarily changing the order of how they're riding. I think it's more a question of that Jupa was on the front, he was near the front when this group went, and rather than letting the group go too far ahead before they actually start setting some sort of tempo, he got on the front and started setting the pace, and then just basically wait for his teammates to get back up to the front, and at which point I think we'll see Jupa actually back into their team lineup, and sort of normal service will resume.
So this group now starting to set that metronomic pace with Michael Sheehan, who was a handy 6th place finish through the week, decided to go raiding in the bunch. are in the breakaway group up the road. Cartier, well, he knows no other way. Alexis Cartier has gone and made it into this move, which could well be the early break of the day, or the earliest one of any substance anyway. And Paolo Simeon getting a little bit of encouragement from Michael Sheehan of the Jelly Belly powered by Maxis squad. Cartier through to the front once more. Gordian Banzer of the Swiss cycling team. Rainer Honig has made it in for Team Vorarlberg. The mountains have been dispensed with. Half a minute advantage now for our breakaway group up front, down to the final 56 and a bit kilometers. Well, this is the breakaway group with just over a half-minute advantage, but the racing, actually, there has been a little bit of attacking of late. Alexis Cartier, some frustration for the rider in white at the front. That's Michael Sheehan from the Jelly Belly powered by Maxis. He's looking for cooperation in there. Paolo Simeon in the green jersey, lime green jersey, with the orange flashing from Bardiani's CSF, decided that there wasn't full cooperation in the group. He was going to try and attack to thin it out. Didn't really serve to achieve anything, except that there was a little bit of discontent and discord in amongst this group of 6 up front. So Simeon safely in there. Alexis Cartier here at the back for the H&R Block Pro Cycling team. Meanwhile, the bunch behind setting a steady tempo. The usual pattern has emerged. Willier CSF have got to the front, and I think they'll be satisfied with the composition of that group. The intermediate sprints have been dispensed with, and it could well be that this group has an opportunity now, should they wish and should they manage to get themselves organised.
Well, when you say an opportunity, there's still certainly one rider in here, Gordian Banzer from the Swiss cycling team. He's only 21 seconds down on GC, so they can't let this group go too far up the road either. But in saying so, I think Willier Trestino have now taken up proceedings on the front of the bunch again, and are starting to keep this group under check.
Simeon goes to the front. He's had a reasonably good week so far. Good 5th and 4th place finishes in the middle of the week on the sprint stages. Should this group survive through to the end, he'd certainly start favourite if it came down to a sprint. A long way to go before that's been decided. Here's Banzer that you mentioned, the Swiss cycling rider, as we pick up the back of the bunch, and Jakub Mareczko is trying to surf the wheels and get as much shelter as possible for as long as possible. Nothing of any significance there. Sure why we were saying that, but maybe he's just loitering a little bit further back than might be advised for a rider of his pedigree and stature in the bunch.
Yeah, sometimes you find yourself just in that position where you end up drifting a bit too far back, but it doesn't look like there's any kind of problem for Mareczko. He's moving his way back up towards his team again, and I think soon we'll slot in behind Mosca to just keep an eye on things as well. And it's always good to have the sprinter up there with the team at this point in the race. And I think for Mosca it's quite a sort of a sign of safety as well, having the sprinter there, because you know that the sprinter can take an incredibly hard turn on the front should they really need to, and actually act as a, what should we call it, not necessarily a lead out man, but should it come down to the fact that this little group stays away for too long, then you always got the last man standing there will be the sprinter, and he can still do a decent turn on the front to close the gap down.
That would be an interesting way. Even if Mareczko wins, if Zanotti is second, then he wins this bike race overall. Is there any suggestion that Willier might be advised to change their tactics a little bit and use Mareczko as a rider for Mosca? Because his sprinting style probably wouldn't lend himself to making a good lead-out man. I'm not sure whether that's something he could change for this situation. But here we have actually Mareczko on the tail of the yellow jersey, just riding shotgun.
Yeah. That's the right way to do it right at this moment. I don't think that it would be any real idea in having Mareczko leading Mosca out. I don't think Mosca is quick enough to really pull that kind of a sprint off against Zanotti. They're just going to have to hope that basically Mareczko can win, and that Zanotti doesn't get up there in the sprint. That's the only way really that they can play this. As
take
far
the,
as
take the 10 seconds and hope that that it's down to only he'd have to be second then in order to win the race. So for Zanotti, and indeed his sprinting performances this week, well, impressive when the big sprinters have been eliminated, but he really needs the hills and it to be as tough as possible to try and pull some of those better sprinters out of it.
Yeah, he does. I mean, if he gets onto the right wheels, Zanotti's fast enough to follow the wheel of Mareczko to the line, and that's what I was alluding on earlier. Then, if I was Zanotti, I would focus my whole sprint on Mareczko at this point, and just basically looking for that second place. And the best way to do that is follow Mareczko's wheel and see if you can possibly attempt to come around him in the final, or at least challenge him, because then you know that if everything goes as it has been this week, Mareczko's been winning by a good bike length or two every single sprint. So if you're attached to that back wheel, chances are that you're actually going to end up finishing second. And I would bag everything on that.
Yes, because we've seen Delco Marseille Provence in the blue jerseys just on the right-hand side here, just about a third of the way down the bunch. They'll start to be a little bit more prominent as we come closer to the finish. You can be absolutely certain of that. Good finish from Emils Liepins yesterday, but watch out for Martin Last. String of three successive second-place finishes in the middle of the week for Martin Last, and he really wants to go one better than that. But Delco Marseille Provence, they were really attempting to take it to Willier Trestina. They weren't interested in second. They were ending up with second-place finishes, but it wasn't what they were going for. Whereas Zanotti there's a completely different characteristic of sprint if second is all he wants.
Yeah, it will be, and I guess it kind of sounds a bit strange, but finishing second isn't necessarily that difficult if you have a sprinter who's as outstanding as Mareczko has been. All you need to really do is follow the wheels, and following the wheels, okay, it's hard, don't get me wrong here, but for someone of Zanotti's caliber and sprinting ability, it wouldn't be sort of stretching him to massive extent. It's just finding that wheel and making sure that is your wheel. And he's got enough big boys from that Dutch team around him as well to be able to sort of move people around him and create some space to Zanotti on the back wheel.
The big bunch winding their way down towards the finish in Wanning Shinglong today. Crowds out in forces they have been throughout the week, and great to see the vegetation. And mentioned the botanical gardens not too far from here, 1,200 different species of plant life. There's one that's particularly attractive.
I guess if we're looking a little bit further down on the on general classification as well, with those 3 bonus seconds, Emils Liepins has now moved up to being 11 seconds down, so he's still got that possibility of actually moving into third place if he finishes second, and actually if he wins the race, well, yeah, he'll still be second.
Right, so for Liepins, well, his best potential is to, assuming it ends up as a bunch finish, which looks increasingly like. I'll tell you what, the speed that the bunch are travelling at, they're not giving the group much rope, really, are they? Still just 20 seconds. It's coming down, and I don't think they're thinking about the break. They're just setting a tempo that's making it as difficult as possible for other counter-attacks to come out of that bunch.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly don't want the attacks. There's no doubt about that. We've still got one more 4th category climb towards the back end of the stage, and yeah, like I said, I think the peloton right now is still somewhat worried about Banza in this group, the Swiss rider, who's now in second place, going up to take a turn on the front. If they moved out of the group, then all of a sudden, I think Willier would probably back off and let this group go away, because at that point no one is of any danger on the general classification, and they could afford to. Actually, it would favour them to let the group go up the road. Here we go, Cartier putting a move in.
You could almost see it, couldn't you? You could feel it. He's frustrated really with the lack of cooperation in that group.
I don't think it's the lack of cooperation. I think he's worked out that this guy here, Banzer, is too dangerous for GC, and with him there, they're not going to get given any kind of leeway heading in towards the finish. So the only way to really give yourself an outside chance of making this break stick is by going up the road on your own and trying to get rid of the Swiss rider and leave him to get mopped up by the bunch, at which point, like I said, it's certainly, if I was dictating things for the Wilier Triestina team, I would back off as quickly as I possibly could. But at the same time, it's quite interesting to see that Monkey Town are sitting right next to Wilier Triestina with the whole team on the front as well. So there's almost like a drag race already at this stage. Looks like they've just backed down a bit now. I certainly wouldn't be giving Wilier Triestina any kind of help at this point. I would save as much firepower as possible.
Yeah, Delco Marseille Provence a little bit further back than they've been in the sprint stages earlier on this week. The gap showing at 16 seconds.
What I would also do, as if it was from the Monkey Town team, I would look at this fourth category climb. Yes, it's not a massive climb, but it certainly did string things out quite a bit on the opening stage when we had this climb, and it did put a few riders under a bit of pressure. And so with Zanotti climbing as well as it does, I would really, as you know, tactically from Team Monkey Town, have a massive go on that climb. See if we can get rid of Mareshko, create a smaller group of select riders, GC riders, at which point we know that Zanotti is fast enough to win this, or even like we said, pick up that second place, and he would end up being on equal terms with Mosca at that point.
Well, that would be a courageous tactical play. I mean, you've really got one or the other. If they go for it, that's the final classified climb of the week. It comes at just inside 15 kilometers to go, relatively short. It's listed at just 400 meters long and just about 7%. It's a Cat 4 ascent, but it just might be enough to provide a bit of a springboard. A lot of tired legs in there. If Monkey Town would have to choose to play it that way, or choose to surf the wheels and try and just pick up that lead out from Mareshko through to second place. It can hardly be both, can it?
No, I think it can be both.
Okay.
I think you can definitely do that, because Zanotti is not really going to be hurt too badly by if his teammates are working for him and setting that up and actually creating that move on the climb. Then Zanotti can just follow the wheels around, so he doesn't necessarily have to go on a solo attack or try and make that move on his own. It's more of a team move, and there's enough riders in here who'd really want to have a go at that. I'm thinking Mark Demar is going to be another rider who'd probably like to have a go on this climb. So there will be enough riders there to back him up for something like that, and it would be the one way to get rid of Mareshko and create that opportunity. And even if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't come off, I don't think it will leave too big a dent in Zanotti. It'll leave a bigger dent in Mareshko. Right.
If it's a match burn for Zanotti, it's at least one, and maybe more for some of the other riders. So worth the play. So you can have your cake and eat it. Two options for the Monkey Town team. Fascinating conclusion coming up to this final stage of Tour of Hainan. Going to get another commercial break out of the way. Canadian rider Alexis Cartier has gone forging clear once more. He's developed his advantage now. It's up over 40 seconds. His erstwhile breakaway companions not so far behind, well, a little bit more than 10 seconds behind, and plenty of instruction going in for Reinier Honig, the Dutchman, the Team Vorarlberg squad, as he tries to get on terms, and they are still pushing on behind. Frustration for Sheehan.
I think the Vorarlberg team managers just come up and said, look, you're not going to go anywhere with Banzer in this group. So I think the tactics certainly would, from the team manager at that point, would have been, look, see if you can create another attack, try and bridge across to Cartier, and go from there, because they need to get rid of the Swiss rider out of that group, and otherwise they're just going to get kept too close all the time by the peloton.
Yeah, and we're getting closer and closer to the finish, to the point where they'll just wind things up for the sprint regardless of what's happening in the bunch. So if there's any chance for this group to establish an advantage that gives them at least a racer's chance, something needs to happen pretty quick.
Yeah, it has to happen very, very quickly, and not only are we bringing it up towards the finish, it's also that climb where there's going to be a certain amount of chasing for position going into the bottom of that one. A lot of riders are going to want to be very close to the action, and see, still got no. Go back there, man. You're just causing us all sorts of carnage.
He's not feeling that popular in there, is he, at the moment? Gordian Banzer. There's no rule that says he's got to go back. It's more about the tactics, and will he be feeling a little bit intimidated there? Clearly not at the moment. He's keen and eager to ride on. Danilo Honda really has his riders fired up. They've been in pretty much everything this week, and the Swiss team have helped to animate this race and make it what it is. But Banzer, who's had produced a couple of good finishes over the last couple of days, 11th and 12th in the big GC days, so clearly, as you say, he's well placed as a result of those performances. But well, how much longer will he be permitted, you might say, to sit in here? A lot of anxious looks from the riders in the breakaway group as Cartier continues to forge clear of the peloton. The peloton at the moment is just playing a watching brief, keeping those riders within 34 seconds, the important riders, very specifically the Swiss rider Gordian Banzer. His teammates behind are watching as well. Lucas Spengler towards the front. Then the white and red jerseys you see there, that's Mark Damar and the Hainan squad. Of course, the blue jersey of the leading Asian rider. We're down to 12 Asian riders left in this competition. That's how hard the racing has been all week. And Liu Hainan heading towards a fine top 10 finish, but the way the bonus seconds are being shared about and moving around, well, there's going to be a little bit, or the potential certainly, for a little bit of an upset in the final finishing order. Well, it's the Willier Trestina team on the front. And now the Delco Marseille Provence squad starting to gravitate towards the front. Their play, will it be for... And this is fascinating stuff, isn't it?
They're just going to leave Banzer on the front of this group here, and leave him do all the work. I certainly wouldn't take a single turn for him at this point, because you've asked politely for him to sort of move out of that group, and if he's not doing that, then just leave him riding on the front. And then as soon as he's starting to go from left to right of the road, and clearly starting to feel the effects of this, then that's when you hit it as hard as you can, and try and bridge across to Cartier. But at the same time, you can't let Cartier get too big a gap, because then it's going to be really hard work to bridge across to him.
Yeah, Banzer is a strong rider with a good future. Not currently attached to any other team. Races in, say, UCI Racing this year, done substantially with the Swiss national cycling team. Cartier, meanwhile, very different agenda for him, and what a great performance he's produced today, and indeed pretty much all other days. Mountain biker by interest, and here you have it.
There you go, first attack.
This is going to happen non-stop until Banzer's not in that group anymore, or they've been caught in the peloton.
Yeah, I think they're just going to start attacking as much as possible. Here you go, another couple of moves.
Now it's Sheehan that tries his luck, and Banzer is so strong, isn't he? And all this is doing is actually shelling some of the riders. That's Cuesta, who from the Hainan squad, Stephen Cuesta, who was minded to try the attacks and find himself at the back as a result. Banzer struggling to close the gap here, and these three riders will get together. They will be aware that they have dispensed with Gordian Banzer in this little flurry of activity, including a fascinating interlude and what's been a really gripping edition of this event. And it's Honig now for Team Vorarlberg in the black and yellow colours. Sheehan is there, and Paolo Simeon.
He's still
pursuing
and continuing his efforts, Banzer there, to try and get back into the trio that's just attacked him. Yeah, interesting tactics, definitely, because it's spending an awful lot of energy trying to stay in this breakaway that's not really going to get him anywhere because of his general classification position.
Second place finish on a stage of Tour of Alberta. He's a real breakaway specialist, is Alexis Cartier. He's not afraid to race clear, and he's stretching his lead indeed over these three. That might change a little bit now because we've got full cooperation with Paolo Simeon.
Honing is the one there on the back here from Vorarlberg, who is feeling this a bit. He's not quite capable of going through and taking the turn.
Honing, the 34-year-old, he's been around the ranks of pro-continental teams and the continental squads all the way back to 2003. It's been a long and storied career, but in the lower ranks of cycling. Third on GC in the World Classic Ports race back in 2013. Strongest result for Honing. Has he got the strength now to stay with the riders up front, closing down, or at least attempting to close down on Alexis Cartier? But look at the movement in the bunch behind, because they're fairly charging along as well. Yeah,
they certainly are, and with the tailwind that we got at this point in time as well, the peloton is certainly moving very, very quick.
Lots of movement as the teams try and get coordinated and get themselves into position. It's like the Col squad have decided to move up. I'm not so sure they're not perhaps thinking about the potential to split things maybe with a bit of a crosswind section.
There's always that potential, but at the same time I think they are somewhat worried about the Swiss man up in the front here, and I think they just want to help Vilja Trestina out to make sure that they're not letting that group drift away too far.
Crosswind section comes with sort of not too far away from it actually, so a little bit of a right turn coming up, and that might change things up a little bit, but at the moment, as you say, Magnus, it's more about making sure that they close down the Swiss rider who's proving to be a general classification threat, Gordian Banzer.
I think Banzer has just lost contact with those three riders. It'd be interesting to get a shot as to where he is, but I think he might be coming back here now.
Cartier up front, for what it's worth, is over 50 minutes down. He's not of any significance overall. And look how tough things are. Sam Crome, who's had a really tough day, tough couple of days of racing, just looking for someone to close a gap for him.
Yeah, and there's certainly a bit of crosswind going on here, because the group is, or the peloton is moving in towards the very left-hand edge of the road and stringing out. This is it's going to be a painful stretch of road for them.
It's hammer time on the final stage of Tour of Hainan, charging along at more than 60 kilometers an hour, and it'll be interesting to see what that does to the lead of Alexis Cartier, because he'll be feeling the pinch a little bit up front. A little bit of activity on the front. The bunch is stretched thin. Nobody's letting the wheel go at the moment, but now we get the Monkeytown team, it looks like, have gone to the front to try and see if they can shake things up a little bit. The Willier team have been pushed back a little bit. Marechko, though, trying to remain ever vigilant. Alexis Cartier, your solo leader, but he can see the three riders coming up, his erstwhile breakaway companions, and of those three, well, none of them is from the Swiss cycling team. So Cartier now will be aware that there are no general classification threats among those riders, so he might just throttle back and wait for them.
At this point in time, you definitely back off and wait for the three riders that are coming up, and I think Banzer has actually been swept up by the peloton, but the gap is coming down by that move into the crosswind, and it just goes to show how fast the peloton starts moving as soon as you get a crosswind section, and a few teams are keen to put a bit of pressure on and see whether they can split up the bunch and catch a few riders out.
Well, pretty much all the riders are in the one shot at the moment, and it's Cartier about to be picked up by Michael Sheehan, Paolo Simeon and Honing of the Team Vorarlberg squad, the three chasers. But the bunch, well, they're not much more than half a minute back of even that. They are closing things down, but Cartier continues to resist. Still 34 and a bit kilometers to go. wetlands that characterize the topography in this part of the world, very much in evidence. But the weather's been great for the riders today, hasn't played a role, despite the fact that rain in this monsoon region has been forecast for the day. So far it's been managing to stay dry. And there the Hainan squad. Indeed, Mark de Maar has gone to the front. Van Lyck, I believe, on his wheel. The Monkey Town rider has been up the road this week, and they're giving a little bit of assistance to William Trestina, trying to get some wrestle control of this peloton back once more.
Yeah, still a bit of action going on there, trying to use the wind to potentially split the bunch up a fraction. But right now, if I was William Trestina, I would try to just ease off and let this group kind of go up the road a bit further.
Sheehan is always animated, isn't he? He's always chatting and discussing and constantly negotiating and explaining. Cartier now back with those other three riders. Three become four, and their advantage a narrow one to say the least. Bunch behind though, starting to spread wide again, so it looks like there's, if not quite a cessation of hostilities, looks like it's slightly less intense than it was a little while ago.
Yeah, certainly looks like it. William Trestina back on the front again, in charge of proceedings, and with that I have a feeling that they're going to want to try and they need to just throttle back ever so slightly and just slowly ease up the pressure on the front, so that we don't have the same kind of attacks and what should we call it? Well, just teams trying to split the race up in the crosswind. If you back off too much, then straight away someone else will take up proceedings at the front, and you don't really want that as a team with the yellow jersey. You want to stay in control at the front, right at your pace, and hope that everyone else is happy with you doing that. But at the same time, letting this group of four riders now just drift away from the peloton and get that minute and a half to maybe 3 minutes, and mop up all the bonus seconds at the finish, because I think for William Trestina that's going to be the safest bet right now to have Moscow win this race overall.
It's a long 80 kilometer plus finishing circuit. We're racing from Lengshui towards Wanning Xinglong, the southeast corner of the island of Hainan, the southernmost province of the People's Republic of China. And now the Cult squad trying to come up to give that assistance. Joe Cooper's there as well in that national champions jersey of New Zealand. The RTS Monton team also putting a rider on the front, so it's the final shake of the dice as well for so many of these teams, so they all want to get involved, because they know there are no more opportunities after this, not just for this race but for most of the riders in here. There are no more opportunities this season.
No, definitely, and I think there's still a couple of guys in here that haven't actually got a contract for next year yet. If I'm not mistaken, I think Iman Sleepens is still without a contract for next year. Certainly nothing indicated anywhere that he's signed the contract. So yeah, there's a couple of guys who clearly want to finish off with a bang and hopefully pick themselves up a bit of a contract somewhere.
Yes, Liepens is a stagiaire with the squad. He's just joined them as a trainee. He's certainly showing that he is a rider of some ability, but yet to rubber stamp that.
I would definitely put a contract under his nose after this one.
Yes, he's ridden well to say the least. Former third place finisher on overall in the Tour of Estonia. He's a Latvian racer, and stage successes, numbers of seconds and thirds in 2.2s, 2.1 level UCI racing in Europe, and coming up with a very strong result in a 2.8C category race in Asia as well. Emil Liepens, a man for the future. Well, they've got command of the bunch back once more as Mosca, the overall leader on the final stage of Tour of Hainan, sits in the wake of his Willier Trestina teammates who are setting the tempo on the front of the peloton and just giving a little bit more rope to those 4 riders up front. And the patterns that we saw throughout the early stages of this bike race are now being resuming once more, with the Delco Marseille Provence team just sitting behind the Willier Trestina riders and the other squads watching with interest, taking note of the incredible work that's being done by Willier Trestina throughout the week. The yellow jersey, Jacopo Mosca, sitting at the back of his teammates, as indeed is his teammate, leader of the points classification, the 5-time stage winner of this race. Mareshko, one of the Team Novo Nordisk riders, just picking up a wheel. So many of the teams have struggled to get round. They've lost a couple of riders, but still have 5 riders. Indeed 4. They came with 6. Team Novo Nordisk. The entire K-Look cycling team were dispensed with, and it was a very unusual situation. Xin Wang had a little bit of a meltdown a couple of days ago. I don't know whether we saw the coverage where he threw a bottle at a team car that he had judged had knocked him off his bike. No physical harm in evidence at the time, but he was clearly very annoyed, hopping mad. If you take to social media, you might be able to pick up some images of his reaction at the end of the stage, which was animated to say the least. But Xin Wang was disqualified from the race. He was removed, and then the following day his entire team didn't start, so clearly there was a certain amount of surprise. Now obviously there was a very, very tough day on stage 7, but for the entire team not to start yesterday, while no riders remaining from the K-Look cycling team. Remarkable affair.
I wonder how long time it's going to take before one of the other teams starts picking up the pace-making on the front here now. Certainly Monkey Town, they want to make sure that they well, either do, like we said, have a go on the climb, or make sure that they comes into a sprint finish. And I think Delco Marseille are going to be in the same kind of boat there as well. They need for this to be a bunch sprint to try and get Liebins up into onto the podium.
Well, in any question perhaps that Willier Trestina might be minded to actually say, well, look, we're not going to chase down this break, we don't want to, even though Jakub Mareczko would really like them to close it down, because he wants that 6th victory and he wants that record number of wins in 2017.
Yeah,
There's conflicting objectives there.
No, I don't think there's any conflicting objectives there. The objective is to win the bike race overall, and any records that may or may not come with that is what it is. I don't think you can go around racing your bike or racing as a team and try and pick up everything. Chances are that if you go for every piece of the cake, you end up with nothing.
You can't be too greedy, and it's been a pretty good year, or indeed a pretty good week for the Willier Trestina squad. Still setting solid tempo at the front, but the gap is starting to stretch for those 4 riders up to 46 seconds. It was hovering at just a little bit over 20 seconds for quite a long while there was that long period of negotiation with the Swiss rider. Gordian Banzer is now safely back in the peloton after that skirmish, and now the 4 up front starting to make a little bit of hay while the sun isn't shining with Cartier. Well, he's got to be feeling a little bit hungry and thirsty after a busy week's work.
Not quite sure on that one. I would have probably just handed the bottle into the team, to the neutral service, and said, fill that one up for me, will you?
Yeah, he's showing plenty of dexterity and impressive multitasking ability from Alexis Cartier. Gets it all done. And gets the hydration that he needs. 50 seconds advantage for these 4 up front, as the Willier Trestina squad entirely satisfied. Heng Chang squad, well, they've got 2 riders in the top 10, with Mingron Chen here. It's deep in conversation with Sheng Chang, and And then Chen heads back to pick up some bottles and perhaps look after the interests and the needs of Mark de Maar, placed like 5th overall, 8 seconds back.
Seems like there's an awful lot of food being taken on board there as well. Clearly it's been an expensive day in terms of energy that's been spent on the bike.
Yeah, I mean, they're tired, aren't they? I mean, they're not eating for tomorrow at this point. It's not about recovery for the next day's stage. It's just about surviving through to the end of this one with enough joules of energy left to contest the finish. There is the blue jersey of the leading Asian rider, just a little bit further ahead. Liu Jianpeng, 15 seconds back, started the day 7th overall. Perhaps needs to snaffle a few bonus seconds because they're being handed out at the moment. Will it be interesting to see, does it play out that any of the overall contenders are actually able to take the bonus seconds at the back? It's been so much of the talk and the speculation throughout this stage, but the sprinters are still very much in there at the moment. Marechko in that green jersey, the yellow helmet, just behind his teammate and the overall race leader, Jacopo Mosca. The road rises imperceptibly.
Yeah, it looked like there's a couple of other teams now starting to get up to the front and start riding a bit. So clearly they've realised that William Justin are letting this one drift up the road.
Cartier on the back is trying to recover. He must be tired as well. I mean, it was a brave effort out racing solo. Had he not done it, I mean, they might all have ended up back in the bunch. So yeah, it was certainly the right play.
It was really the only play if you're looking at trying to win this stage by breakaway. Then you had to get rid of Banzer to give yourself a fighting chance. Unfortunately, I think it happened a little bit too close to the finish, so there isn't enough time to let a group drift up the road and then bring it back again. And here we go, Monkey Town, Delco Marseille and Coles are taking up the proceedings and starting to work to bring these guys back.
Yeah, they've recognised that William Trustin are not minded to use any energy up. They'll be able to save riders now for the finish. It's good news for Marechka and in turn good news for Jacopo Mosca, because they've no interest in closing down any of those 4 riders up front, none of whom is an overall general classification contender. That means that the Colt squad, if they want to get a stage victory today or anything above that, they've got Kononenko placed 4th overall as well, remember. Picked up a bonus second at the second intermediate sprint. Perhaps Kononenko can move up on general classification if the Colt squad can propel him into a decent situation, although that would be impressive stuff if he manages that.
Well, I think the 3 teams are now on the front. They're all teams that have got nothing to lose, really. They need to put themselves in that position where they can pick up bonus seconds with a bit of luck.
Well, the advantage has stretched ever so slightly now. For the first time, just over 60 seconds lead for our 4 raiders up front, as Alexis Cartier continues to press on in the company of Paolo Simeon. Rainer Honig is there as well, and Jelly Belly, powered by Maxus, are represented by Michael Sheen. The 4 riders clear of the peloton, racing down into the concluding stages of the Tour of Hainan on stage 9. The peloton now with 3 teams on the front trying to close it down to make sure they keep these riders in close attendance, and they need to start stretching it because that group up front of 4 riders still full of fight. I mean, it should be well within their compass. Shouldn't be any stress for them to get on terms, but for all that, there are a lot of tired legs in there, and there aren't so many riders there for the chase.
Well, it all comes down to how many riders they commit to this and how many riders they want to keep to potentially do a lead out. But this is now definitely playing into Marechko's idea of winning a 6th stage and becoming the the winningest rider of the season.
Yeah, and it's all kicked off a bit, hasn't it? Delco Marseille Provence put a couple of riders in there as well with Colson Monkeytown, and suddenly it's all had a fairly drastic effect on the advantage of the 4 riders up front. The latest update down to 40 seconds, and this is why Colts have gone racing. Meanwhile, Michael Sheehan, who hasn't stopped talking since he got in the break, now is chatting to his team manager, just picking up a bottle. Last opportunity. No more feeding from the team cars from the next 800 meters on, so leaving it to the very last moment to pick up the final bottle, and Michael Sheehan will be back to encourage and to assist his breakaway companions as their gap now down to 31 seconds. I wonder, are they aware of just what's happening behind, because they really are pushing on. The crosswind will be a factor here, albeit it's a little bit more sheltered, the roads around here. It's around about 30 kilometers an hour the wind, so it's fairly hectic, and a few gusts that will take it a little bit higher than that. Not quite so obvious, but all smiles in the team car for the H&R squad, H&R block squad, as Cartier. Well, he's not smiling, is he? He's all business.
Well, he has to be at this point in the race, and I think this is kind of last orders being taken by from the team cars as the peloton comes down to 30 seconds behind them.
Monkeytown have put a number of riders, at least 2 there, into that chase. At least a couple for Delco Marseille Provence. Colts as well, stepping it up. William Trestina surfing the wheels for once this week, and happy to watch the efforts of their rival squads in trying to reduce the energy levels of Jakub Mareczko, and perhaps more particularly Jacopo Mosca. And goes up for Mark Demar. He's just indicating a road hazard ahead. Indeed he is. They take them out to the right, and the William Trestina's squad look fully composed at the moment. They've got all their riders in there, and they're safely towards the front, but not absolutely on the front. The gap down to 23 seconds. This one's coming down at a rate of knots.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I think that's why we saw the team cars move up as well, because they knew they were going to get called out of that gap very, very shortly. Gap is tumbling down. Just to remind you, the final climb comes up, starts at 15.1 kilometers to go.
So exactly 4 kilometers from that final classified climb of the week of racing. It's a 4th category ascent in itself, not a particularly difficult assault for the riders, but just a smidgen under 7% for 400 meters. It's enough to perhaps be a launching pad for a late attack. These 4 riders will do well to still be clear over the top of it, because the bunch are really charging along now, and they're not thinking about these 4. They're thinking about making it as tough as possible for everyone else in there, as Sheehan presses on to try and hang on clear for as long as possible. 25-year-old American, 6th on a stage already this week. Standout performance in his career, in his 2nd season with Jelly Belly powered by Maxxis. Squad that came to this race with ambition haven't really managed to come up with the big results this week. Would have hoped for a little bit more from Sergei Tvekov, but it's been a long season for all those riders. Jacob Rath with a fine 7th place finish yesterday, though. It was a good result. Sheehan is his 6th place finish as well. Can he improve on that? Well, he'd have to stay clear, and it's looking increasingly unlikely that that's going to be the case. Inside 20 kilometers remaining of Tour of Hainan. What a week it's been. Started where it's going to finish at Wanning Xinglong, with that great stage victory for Jon Aberasturi of Team Ukio, ambushing the European Raiders. William Trestina's squad of Jakub Mareczko bested on that occasion. All they could manage was that 2nd place finish. Inside 19 seconds lead now for the 4 riders up front. Inside 18 kilometers to go, and the bunch stretched in one long line. There is occupying as much tarmac in terms of front to back as they possibly could, which tells you that things are starting to get a little bit grippy, a little bit difficult for everyone in there. Heading down and into the gates that welcome them into Xinglong. The very back of the group is Tvekov. We mentioned his ambitions earlier in the race, but hasn't worked out. Now there's a little bit of attacking going on. Simeon takes Cartier clear. Sheehan is perhaps looking to dispense with Hunig. Hunig suffering a little bit there. Where's the next attack going to come from? They're looking over their shoulders. Their lead down to 14 seconds. So this is really a lead to be last man standing in the last late attack of the week. Well, perhaps there is going to be further attacking between now and the finish line, but in terms of early breaks, well, Sheehan is going to go, and Cartier, well, he's relentless, isn't he? Such a strong, powerful rider. Cartier manages to knit that one up, but it's Simeon who's going to have to finish it off. And has anyone got the legs for another attack? All of this attacking and stalling, well, serves only to make the job easier for the bunch behind, to close them down. The big train behind charging along, speeds approaching 60 kilometers an hour.
Only a couple of 100 meters away now from the start of that climb as well, so all of a sudden now the guys in the bunch are going to start chasing position as well, to make sure that they're right near the front when they turn into the climb. Cartier's gone on his own.
Wow, what about this from Cartier? Sheehan doesn't want to let his fellow North American get clear on his own, so he's going to try and leave Simeon and Hunig behind. Hunig doesn't seem to have a lot to offer to the fight, and Simeon, I think, too, is starting to feel the pinch, so he'll be able to grind his way back onto the tail of Michael Sheehan. It is a little sidebar attraction to the main feast, which will be the final race for stage and overall placings. Who's going to get the final climb of the week? It's of minor interest. The King of the Mountains classification has been decided in favour of Sam Crome, a 23-year-old Australian, on the front of the bunch. Colt squad still with two, Monkey Town with two, and then the Willier squad with their riders have been split up a little bit. Now we're on this climb. Not as obvious, really. The width of the road perhaps hiding the real gradient that they're facing. Hunig doesn't want to give up, wants to be with his breakaway companions at the moment that they're caught. And it's a flat-out sprint to the top here. It's a short, sharp little shock at the end of over 1,500 kilometers of racing across 9 days. Hunig, I said he was a beaten docket. Looks like he could well be the last man standing. Talk about hiding your light under a bushel. That was impressive stuff, and he's got the strength, and it looks like he's going to take the final climb of the week. Sheehan, though, is almost at a standstill as the bunch catch him. And now we have the attacking with Team Vorarlberg going on the attack. Team
Vitaly Butz picking up the final couple of points there for the King of the Mountains as well.
Well, that was great resistance by Vitaly Butz, not just ensuring, I think, that he's going to finish second, which I think is important in terms of a bit of prize money that will not be insignificant. What's it done to the bunch behind? Is that Mark Damaris just trying to stretch it thin? You did mention might just suit him as well. Joe Cooper has gone on the attack. The New Zealand national road race champion, took his second national road title this year. Picked up his first one a couple of years ago. And from Wellington has been on the attack throughout the week. He's been on the attack throughout today's stage. He was clear solo for much of the early stages before we picked up the live TV pictures.
Interesting to see that Kononenko was quite far back in the bunch going up over that climb there. He was really on the in the last sort of 10-15 riders. So
Kononenko's not enjoying it, and Kononenko, having picked up those bonus seconds earlier on, may just have gone a little bit deeper than he might have liked and is struggling to recover. So Mikhailo Kononenko started the day 4th overall, picked picked up a couple of bonus seconds, now sits in the level on time with Emils Liepens, the rider who's third overall. Benjamin Pradas, remember, 3 seconds back in Jacopo Mosca, the overall race leader. Those are the riders fighting for GC. Mark Demar, well, I think he'd fancy a stage 10. He just seems to be really flying in this race, and he was right at the front of the bunch as they went across the top of that climb. Demar sitting 5th overall, 8 seconds back. Another attack, Bardiani CSF to get something from the week. Missing out on the stage victory and just trying to get across to Joe Cooper. Monstering the bike. Still the gradient is gripping a little bit. They might be over the top of that King of the Mountains climb, but well, the pain in the legs will be telling the riders that they're still very much not on a flat road.
This could be the winning move of today.
Well, Joe Cooper has been relentless, has done manful work throughout the week for his Heng Chang, or indeed for his Isoway Sports Swiss Wellness squad, and he's forged a narrow but very important advantage at this point.
Well, I think unless Monkey Town and Delco Marseille take up proceedings on the front of the bunch now, this is likely to be one of those moves that goes up the road.
Patrick Schelling, the young Swiss rider, he's just 20 seconds down, so he's got a great opportunity to move up as well if he was able to make the junction, get across and contest what would be a famous victory. But Cooper doesn't, he's going to hang around to see is anyone going to join him.
No, and I think Schelling has realised that the bunch is bearing down on him, and with that has backed off his efforts.
Yeah, it's Schelling that was second across the top of that climb behind Vitaly Butz and Rainer Hunig from the early break, and Hunig has gone back, but Schelling too has been joined by some riders counter-attacking out of that bunch. No one able to put manners on it at the moment, and Joe Cooper is racing clear. They're all looking around at each other to see where the next attack is going to come from. It's going to come from Bardiani CSF.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. Couple of Monkey Town riders in there as well.
Yeah, through the tropical afforestation, which provides a little bit of shelter, but you can see the leaves fluttering in the breeze, and they're heading, and they'll make the turns that will head towards a headwind finish, and that's going to make it just that little bit tougher for Cooper and his ilk to stay clear of the bunch. The bunch weaving around the road in crocodile fashion, and it is well, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough at the end of a long hard week, at the end of a long hard season. It's just so easy to throttle back and say I'll just roll in with the bunch. But mind you, I think rolling in with the bunch is not even a particularly easy to do at the moment.
He's impressed me this week, Joe Cooper. He's really raced incredibly well, as Mark Demar has a go on the front.
Demar goes for it, and Demar tries to drag a group clear. The yellow jersey of Jacopo Mosca needs to be ever vigilant, and he's not far from the front, aware of the danger. Mosca is so full of fight, sitting third place, needs to take responsibility. He knows it, across the top of that little drag, and they'll keep attacking over the top of it. And this is this Schelling again going for it. Looks like Team Vorarlberg have numerous riders that are capable of racing clear.
Looks more like Lienhard to me.
Yeah, you could be right. Fabian Lienhard with a great 10th place victory position, I should say, a few days ago.
And there's your tropical garden.
1,200 different species of plants. So just over 11 kilometers remaining on this final stage of the Tour of Hainan for 2017, and it's Joe Cooper with a narrow lead over the peloton. Will he still emerge clear from those trees? The cars herald the arrival of the lone leader. In the middle of the tropical botanic garden, 340,000 square meters, and the riders covering quite a lot of it at the moment. They're stretched thin, but well, it's not. There aren't too many cracks, or enough cracks in there really to be decisive.
No, definitely not. And looking at the pace in the bunch there now, it's going to be very, very difficult for Joe Cooper to stay clear of the group. So many attacks coming out of that peloton at the moment.
Well, Cooper would like at least one or two riders to come across, and you've got to try and it's not 15 seconds that we saw a few moments ago, it's just a handful of seconds, but he'll continue to press on. Mosca, though, look at the strength of the yellow jersey. He's right at the front, showing he's really stamping his command on this race, isn't he?
Well, it's the best way to do it, really, just to go from wheel to wheel, right at the sort of staying second or third wheel all the time, and you don't need to take any turns on the front. It's up to everyone else to attack and to try and set their sort of mark on the race and sort of do their tactics coming into the final. Mosca just has to follow and make sure that no one really rides away from him, certainly not anyone of any sort of real importance. But here's Mark Demar putting another big effort in.
Well, Mosca's not going to allow Mark Demar to get clear, because Demar is within 8 seconds of the overall lead, and Mosca in turn is actually going to race across with Mark Demar. That could change things up a little bit, but it's just seconds of an advantage, and Joe Cooper is going to be a little bit frustrated as he looks around. Will he be encouraged to continue to ride? Because, well, there's a lot of riders suffering in there, and still the potential to force a split. But the Delco Marseille Provence squad in the blue colours, they're not going to allow the yellow jersey. They're not going to allow Mark Demar to get up the road by even a few bike lengths if they can possibly avoid it. Well, look at the splits in there now. We're starting to see a few cracks emerging, and a lot of riders struggling to get back on terms to contest the win.
Yeah, still all the main favourites up in the front part of the peloton, though. So I think by the time they catch Joe Cooper and they kind of sit up a bit, it will all come back together very, very quickly. The question is going to be, though, whether the likes of Mareshko has made it in with that front split. And I think looking at how hard it's being raced at the moment, I got my doubts.
Well, that was a lesson, wasn't it? I mean, so often you'll see riders when they're almost caught, they'll just sit up and say, well, that one didn't work. But it's often worth, especially in topography like this, worth persevering, and just he's stretching clear again.
I'm just getting word here that Jakub Mareshko's had a bit of an incident and is chasing behind the peloton at the moment.
Okay, so we watch out for Jakub Mareshko. Try and see if you can pick him out from these helicopter shots in the green jersey. We believe he's in a chase group, and there are several chase groups, aren't there, as they try to knit some sort of a peloton behind back together again inside the closing 5 miles, 8.5 kilometers remaining. Cooper still hanging on.
Yeah, what a brave ride this is by Joe Cooper, not backing off at any point. Even when he was almost caught by the bunch, he's still pursuing with his efforts, and such a great ride.
It's a super ride, because they just he's actually cracked them again, hasn't he? There's going to be another attack coming up very shortly by riders with different agendas. The Delco Marseille Provence squad, I think, have spotted an opportunity perhaps to split this bunch once more, but Mosca is so full of strength. He's got one or two teammates sitting a little bit further behind, but he's surely the strongest of all. Joe Cooper, though, continues to plough on regardless, and well, if he was to hang on for this win, it really would be a remarkable thing. It's not certain by any means at the moment, but they know this finish, they know how difficult it is, and they know exactly what's required to try and hang on clear. Well, Cooper knows what he needs to do to hang on clear. Here comes the counter attack from the Mitchelton Scott squad.
Yeah, there's not really one team with a lot of riders near the front here now to carry on chasing. So if Joe Cooper can just continue for another kilometre or two, I think he'll break the back of this one. So Delco Marseille comes up with one rider, and then that rider gets spent, and all of a sudden there is nothing happening again. So
this could be Liu from the Mitchelton Scott squad trying to get across the gap to Joe Cooper. Cooper has stretched his advantage. He'll look behind and get a little bit of encouragement. It's narrow. You would say 9 times out of 10 it's insignificant. But he is just, every single one of those riders behind him is practically out on their feet. It's been such a tough week, and they're all just hanging on grimly. Little cracks developing in the line, and riders in there just begging for someone to come around them to close it. The rider behind thinking, well, I really don't want to do it, I'd rather you did it. So that group, well, can't be much more than 30 strong at the moment. cars in between as well, which suggests a big split. And Jakub Mareczko has been distanced. And that's both good and, well, it's good news for some. It's bad news for Moscow, though, because Mareczko, you would have said he's a nailed-on certainty to take the 10 points for the 10 bonus seconds, but that means that Moscow could be a little bit vulnerable in this finishing sprint.
Yeah, definitely can be. It's a bit of organisation here now in the bunch, though. Delco Marseille got 2 riders up there as well. That's one rider from, couldn't quite work out which team he was, but certainly a bit more of an organised chase by a couple of riders, and this is now where it's going to be really tough for Joe Cooper. He's been out here for a long period of time, and with that chase now,
well, at the moment it's hard to see that.
It's actually going clear there. There's 1 or 2 riders going clear.
One, it's Delco Marseille Provence have put a rider up the road. Is one of them Liepens? Looks like Van Looy could well be the Monkey Town rider behind. We won't speculate too much. Difficult to pick them out. It's a much taller rider indeed from the Monkey Town, but it is certainly those 2 teams that are decided to race clear. And the Delco Marseille Provence team have, well, they've tried in the sprints throughout the week to get that victory, and they haven't managed it. Could well be that they managed to get clear with Aristi. Looks like Mikel Aristi that has managed to just jog clear.
Actually, quite a good thing for Moscow if this goes away.
Yeah, that would take the bonus seconds. Van Breda as well. Rick Van Breda of the Monkey Town Continental team trying to make the junction with Joe Cooper. Looks like that's going to happen, and there's a lot of daylight, isn't there? A lot of day. It's all a relative term. That bunch, is it swelling in size? Are riders getting back in?
This is not necessarily a very good move by Delco Marseille. They didn't really want to put a rider up there because it means there's less riders on the front of the bunch riding at this moment in time. So the Delco Marseille rider would have been much better off just waiting with his team in the bunch.
Well, presumably he's going to sit on here, so that might change things a bit. 4 kilometres to go, 3 riders clear. Joe Cooper is about to be joined by the 2 riders from Delco Marseille Provence and Monkey Town.
I don't think it changes an awful lot at all because at the end of the day, Delco Marseille don't really want, well, they'd like a stage win, but they'd like the stage wins to be Emils Liepens instead, so that he can move up on the general classification. At the moment, they just got 1 rider who's currently about 27 minutes down on GC up in that break, and that's not really doing an awful lot for them.
So now we have the attacks coming from the Delco Marseille Provence, and that is a bit of a surprise. Aristi we thought might just sit on, but he wants to race clear and race solo to victory, and this at least would be the stage victory that Delco Marseille Provence so dearly want at this point, but not good news for Emils Liepens. The bonus seconds are disappearing up the road courtesy of his teammate. Meanwhile, Monkey Town have their Dutch rider Van Breda closing this one down, and Cooper, after all his resistance, finds himself having to close again. No cooperation in there. That surely means that it's going to come down to a sprint. Cooper, though, well, he'll go straight through them if there's not another attack. Indeed, right up the middle, Cooper attacks, and well, he knew it was going to happen, didn't he?
3 kilometers to go now. This is ride of the week for me is Joe Cooper. This is absolutely incredible riding.
Well, the two riders from Delco Marseille Provence and Monkey Town are just going to look around and head back into the bunch. Could be good news actually for the Delco Marseille Provence. They've got another rider to help with the chase. Van Breda looks behind. He'll pick up Zanotti. I think they're probably thinking about that.
Well, they're definitely thinking about Zanotti, but this is a significant gap now to Joe Cooper.
Is Zanotti in there? We've got to assume he is. Remember, Zanotti has a great chance of winning this race. Mosca has been so strong, but does he have the sprint necessary? The sprint that he's going to need. The Jelly Belly squad want to try and take command of the chase with Jordan Cheney and Taylor Sheldon on duty there. Van Breda picks it up on the front of the bunch. He's going to set the tempo. They want to close it down. They want to make sure that Cooper is closed down. 2.3 kilometers to go. He's got a racer's chance of taking this. Inside 2 kilometers to go. Indeed, they're under the 2 kilometer marker, so well over 200 meters further up the road. That'll be good news for Joe Cooper. That bunch is starting to disappear in the distance. I tell you what, I think he's going to do it. I think he could actually hang on for this, and that would be immense. He has been on the attack throughout throughout this week, non-stop, and eventually I think he's going to get the victory. But take nothing for granted at this moment. He's got to redouble his efforts. Look at the pain etched on his face, because Joe Cooper is hurting. He's suffering. He's suffered throughout the week. He's made others suffer in his wake as well, and now he's really putting it up to them. He doesn't need to look around. He can only do one thing at this moment, and that's put every single joule of energy into those pedals. Power along as best he can. The kite beckons, and beyond it, the final 1,000 meters as they try to get into position for this finishing sprint. Delco Marseille Provence have riders there aplenty. The Swiss national team as well, and we see Bardiani CSF with Simeon trying to set something up. Which of Maranesi perhaps is the rider that's going to go for them, as now we see Delco Marseille Provence launch, and it's still 1,000 meters to go. It could be a little bit too far. Will it be?
It's going to be
for
tight.
Joe Cooper. It's going to be incredibly tight. They make the left-hander. They've got another right-hander to come.
Yeah, another right-hander to come with about 500 meters to go to the line, and Joe Cooper now just got to do everything he can. Just keep on not looking back, just get out of the seat, accelerate as much as he can. But here comes the bunch.
Here comes the wind-up, and they're going to take big chunks out of his advantage. He's on those finishing barriers. He's got the inside the final 500 meters. Can he possibly hang on? It's going to be by the narrowest of margins. Joe Cooper is riding to glory. Can he possibly hang on? We all hope. I think the neutrals might hope that he will, but there's plenty of riders in there that want to go for the overall success. He's through the final bend. I think he's going to get the win. Joe Cooper is surely going to hang on at this moment. He's going to ride it all the way to the line. It is surely going to be the win for Joe Cooper, with the Delco Marseille Provence squad behind. Are going to wind this one up for the sprint. Dylan Page is coming as well. Kononenko's in there going for the gallop. But it is Joe Cooper who gets his arm in the air and gets the final stage victory of Tour of Hainan. The New Zealand national road race champion with a famous win. What an amazing resistance from Joe Cooper. A fantastic attacking performance and a really wonderful stage victory. And I think the way it all ended up, it's likely to be a final overall success for Jacopo Mosca. We wait for full confirmation of that. We make no assumptions. Mosca, though, is celebrating, and so too is Joe Cooper, and he's getting a lot of claps on the back after an immense performance.
Ride of the week, definitely the ride of the week by Joe Cooper. What a performance that was.
I mean, he was down to just a handful of seconds ahead again and again and again. But that's the man who's also celebrating. Yet Jacopo Mosca has confirmed his overall success. What a week for Willier Trestina. 5-stage victories, the overall win. Well, Joe Cooper's... He didn't have time to zip up, did he? In the traditional fashion, he didn't have much time to celebrate that one at all as he came across the line. Mosca is celebrating. He believes that he's taken the victory. It was superb effort from Delco Marseille Provence to try and get that final stage victory, eventually emerging with yet another podium finish.
I think it was actually Liepens that was up there that got the second place in that won the bunch sprint, should we call it, and with that,
it's going to take him up to potentially fourth place. Let's look through the final few hundred meters. And Cooper
take him up to third place.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
It was 11 seconds down coming into the final sprint here now. If he picks up 6 bonus seconds, that will leave him at 5 seconds down.
Now the calculations, the beads are flying on the abacus here as we try and work out what's happened in the overall. We believe that Jacopo certainly won it. What about Joe Cooper? He's certainly got the stage win.
Massive congratulations for all of the riders.
Jacopo Mosca is 23-year-old neophyte in his first year of professional racing, and couldn't believe it when he got that stage win a couple of days ago. And now he's topped it off with the overall success, his second professional victory. And the Willier Trestina squad have unearthed a great new talent. Joe Cooper already explaining how he did it. He did it just through immense strength, courage, and a refusal to give in. It really was a masterclass, and it was a great demonstration for any young rider that when you attack, just keep attack. Don't give up on the attack just because the group are back to you, especially when the road is at its most difficult. The end of 9 tough days. It is the strongest riders.
Is that Kononenko that's coming up there in 3rd place on the in the sprint?
Certainly, it was a Colts rider. Colts squad with Mikhail Kononenko sitting 4th overall, just 8 seconds back, so might have just pinched a handy 4 seconds, which could well have propelled him into 3rd place. So 3rd and 4th being disputed between Mikhailo Kononenko and Emils Liepins at the back end, but certainly plenty of change on general classification at the conclusion of that final stage. No doubt about the man that got the win. Jacopo Mosca will step onto the top step of the podium at the end of a week when the Willier Trestina squad took 6 stage victories, 5 for Mareshko, and of course this that wonderful Queen stage win for Mosca a couple of days ago on the climbing day into Wushishan. Joe Cooper, twice a New Zealand National Road Race champion, and now great stage victory in the Tour of Hainan in China. Man from Wellington, 31 years of age now, and really in his prime as a bike rider. Look at the efforts of the riders behind. The frustration again for Liepins, wasn't it? Just yet another podium finish for Delco Marseille Provence. They came with their A game. They produced consistent performances throughout the week. Great team riding, always to the fore. Willier Trestina squad, well, they've done so much legwork this week that they were a little bit anonymous in the end up, but Mosca was just so strong. His teammates had propelled him into a situation where he could defend with honour in the back end. So Cooper gets this stage win ahead of Emils Liepins. It was Andrei Kulik got up for 3rd ahead of Dylan Page. Marco Zanotti could take no bonus seconds, but a great 5th place finish for him as they scrolled through the top 20, the top 18 of the final stage of Tour of Hainan. All means I think that Emils Liepins will be confirmed as a podium visitor. Top 3 on general classifications for the Delco Marseille Provence rider. Cooper gets the stage, Mosca gets the overall win.